Hey, it's Luminostic, and today we're going to talk about psychedelics and meditation. Please hit the like button and subscribe. Share these videos with people. We're really trying to do our part to help people with their awakening process, to encourage people to undertake the serious pursuit of spirituality and illumination. And so just asking you to help me do my part by doing your part, and share and subscribe and like the videos. Alright, so psychedelics versus meditation. I don't really feel like this should even be the title of the video, but I've been seeing a lot in Facebook groups lately, psychedelic Facebook groups, where people say like meditation is so much more powerful, or it's just so much better, these kind of blanket general terms. And I think that, that could do people a disservice if anyone actually believes that, because I would say there's a mountain of clinical data that would say that that is just absolutely false. And I'll give you a couple examples of why. I'll also put links in the comments below that will take you to some of these studies and show you, there have been brain scans done with LSD, ayahuasca recently, which I was glad to see, because that was one that I didn't have any information on the neurogenesis or enhanced neuroplasticity, or what exactly ayahuasca is doing in the brain. And we have a little bit more information about that now coming from the scientific world, so that's good. So at any rate, the brain scans with LSD actually showed a lot of brain activity in parts of the brain that we do not normally use. Of course, there have been brain scans done on people that are meditating, and there is a change in brain activity, but it is not anything like the changes that are induced by the consumption of LSD. So I would say that, although we can't tell exactly what it means to have electrical activity in unused parts of the brain, I would say that it is a pretty good bit of circumstantial evidence that it's actually causing some sort of consciousness expansion, that you're using more of the mind. And one of the discoveries that a study that was published recently, they discovered that changes in the hypothalamus, I think it was, during an LSD trip allow the brain to process a ton more information than it normally can. And I would say that further investigation, they could probably find a connection between the electrical activity that is in these unused parts of the brain. So there's, one arena where it appears that psychedelics blow meditation out of the water. Another one is repairing damaged brain cells. This is something that was believed to be impossible until it was discovered with psilocybin studies a few years back, I think at Johns Hopkins University. So the researchers said that they had previously believed that it was impossible to rejuvenate damaged brain cells. Psilocybin proved otherwise. Depression can cause brain cells to shrivel up and cease to function. So obviously in treating, also with alcoholism and other forms of drug addiction. So this is a major step in understanding neurobiologically and neurochemically how it is that these substances are able to address depression and addiction so effectively. Okay, so also, meditation is known to improve concentration and memory, but not nearly to the degree that psilocybin is. And as far as accessing higher states of consciousness, it is very rare, I think, that a meditator has come back and said, well, there were these entities and they told me blah, blah, blah. There have been occasions where, a janitor has come back from being injected with ketamine or something, and he's able to, all of a sudden he knows equations of higher mathematics, with no training at all. He's just downloaded from the Akashic record or the 0-point field or the collective mind, or gotten it from these entities, or whatever you want to call it. So I would say also the reliability of psychedelics to induce a higher spiritual state. People that smoke the bufo toad, the 5-MeO-DMT from the bufo toad, for example, they almost unanimously say that they have this experience of white light and being one with everything and nothing at once. I've been there myself. It wasn't the bufo toad, it was NN-DMT, which is a very similar compound. But, it was identical to what we hear, these Buddhist sages describe. The difference is that we have to take the word of like one or two Buddhas and a couple of Bodhisattvas or whatever, whereas with the bufo toad, everyone that sits down and has a hit of it has had this experience and can confirm that it's there, they've had it for themselves, and it changes their resonance, it changes their frequency, it changes their lives, it changes the way they operate, how they relate to themselves, how they relate to the world, how they relate to other people. So you know, in the modern age, we don't have 40,000 hours or whatever to sit around in a temple and meditate, but we do have 10 minutes for DMT. So, you know, I think that these, that you know, although meditation is very useful, and we are going to get to that in a second, I totally believe that meditation should be integrated. But, you know, if I had to choose one or the other, you know, if I had people that I was responsible for their spiritual development, and they said, should I meditate or should I use plant medicine or even LSD, I would definitely 100% push them towards the psychedelics. And, you know, that's not based on my opinion, that's based on hard scientific data at this point. Because, you know, the brain scans have been done on the meditators, they've been done on the psychedelics, and we have unanimous winner statistically. So, at any rate, diverging off topic a little bit there. So, the synergy idea. For example, if you have all this electrical activity, you have 100 times as many new neural pathways, the neurogenesis capacity of psychedelics. You're going to need more fuel. So, with pranayama, which is a type of meditation where you inundate the brain with oxygen, hold it, and then you exhale it, hold it out. So, it's inundation, deprivation, inundation, deprivation. This was like the old school version of the accelerated path to enlightenment, because, you know, the change in oxygen is basically accelerating like how quickly you get to these higher states of consciousness. It's a lot faster than just like, you know, breath and mindfulness meditation. But if you have taken a psychedelic like LSD and you have all these neural pathways, it's the same thing as like gunning it in a car. You're flooding the brain with the fuel it needs to build these new neural pathways, to do something with all the electrical activity. If you're focusing the mind and directing it, you know that we can direct energy with the mind. You know that we can do this because you can move your hand. There's nothing in the brain but matter and electricity. And this is very important when it comes to the idea of using consciousness to create our reality, which is, of course, a big part of what we're after doing all these things in the first place, right? We want to be able to create our reality. We want to do it with harmony. We want to do it in peace. We want to do it in accordance with our true will, right? So, we're inundating with fuel, then we're depriving to encourage that altered state, that higher spiritual resonance. So, you know, you can see how very easily the combination of LSD and meditation is much better than LSD or meditation. You know, in the modern age, when we have access to the internet and we can look up yoga techniques, we can look up information about psychedelics and how to prepare the medicine and the proper attitude and the diets and everything we need to know to do it safely and to do it with the right intent to get the most out of it, you know. And all the different types of meditation accessible at the push of a button, you know. As the modern psychonaut, the modern spiritual seeker, we're in an unprecedented place to accelerate our personal evolution. You know, there's never been a time in human history where we had access to the tools that we have access to now. So, you know, being competitive and saying like meditation's better, psychedelics better. No, man, use them both, put it together, use sex magic, use pranayama, use psychedelics, use whatever it is that, you know, whatever makes sense to you, whatever resonates you. Understand what you're doing, you know, do your research, but, you know, put these things together. Okay, so I want to say a little bit about the power of meditation, since I've given so many kudos to psychedelics. And a very famous experiment that was done in Washington, D.C., I think in the late 90s. It was the tail end of the crack epidemic. It was the murder capital of the world. I actually lived there at the time, and I can tell you that, you know, there were places where the cops weren't coming. If you got shot in that neighborhood, nobody's coming to help you. It was that bad, you know. So a group of meditators said they were going to lower the crime rate. I think it was 200 people for 12 hours or something to that effect. I'm sure you could look it up. I think they mentioned it in the movie What the Bleep as well. But at any rate, 200 people meditating for 12 hours or something to that effect. And they said, we're going to lower the crime rate in Washington, D.C. by 20%. The chief of police went on record saying it's going to take a foot of snow to lower the crime rate by 20% in the month of June in Washington, D.C. And of course, when they did the experiment, they got a 20% lower crime rate in June. So, what I'm getting at with all that, and this is very, very powerful, we are learning about the capacity of consciousness to influence energy. If you look at it just within our system, you know, the ability to move our hand and whatnot, we already have some evidence there that this is a real thing. And now, you know, ideas from physics, and a lot of different spiritual teachers suggest that the capacity to influence energy, particularly on the subatomic realm, so there are obviously limitations to this, and I know I've said this before, that it's a big mistake to think that magic can do more for you than it can. Magic being using causing change to occur in conformity with will, right? So at any rate, to some extent, there's a good bit of evidence that we have the capacity to influence reality using consciousness. And if the brain is the seat of consciousness, and psychedelics cause all this extra brain activity, all the extra electrical activity, basically a storm of consciousness in the mind, and meditation has been shown to have the ability to, lower crime rate in the most violent city in the world at the time. And of course, you could dismiss it as coincidence, but I think we have, good enough reason to give it the benefit of the doubt, and go ahead and assume that there was some kind of correlation there. I think, the police chief did go on record and acknowledge that he was pretty shocked by the results of that experiment, and that the crime rate actually did decrease to that capacity. So, this is about catalyzing the development of consciousness, the expansion of consciousness, using every tool at our disposal. Not just choosing a path. I think the old paradigm of, being a Christian, or, you find some kind of like prefabricated religion or spiritual practice, and then you just adopt that. Those days are gone. We're looking for a greater degree of individuality in the modern paradigm. We're expanding beyond the old ways. This is evolution, and we have an unprecedented availability of techniques, access to techniques and information, tools to add to our palette, to add to our trick bag, in order to accelerate our personal evolution, to take control of our personal evolution. So, our capacity to discover ourselves, to understand how the energy and the consciousness work together in the universe, and to apply that to create the circumstances that we want. If you change your consciousness, you change your reality. You change your reality, you have the capacity to change the world. We know from the theory of entanglement, for example, that every single particle in the universe responds to every other particle instantly. So that means every time you have a thought, every time you make a movement, every time you make a decision, the entire universe responds accordingly. And those of us that are on the path seeking for a higher spiritual perspective, which, unfailingly leads to a more benevolent, kind perspective, to put creativity above commerce, to put, evolution above self-glory, it's the type of development that we need to see. The human race is perched on a precarious precipice, and we're about to get pushed over, So, yeah, psychedelics are a shortcut, but I've never heard anyone stuck in LA traffic say they didn't want to take a shortcut. Shortcuts are a good thing. The thing is that, you have to have a capacity to, navigate and stay on track. So hit the like button, subscribe, support us on Patreon if you can. We're out here trying to assist people with their awakening process. We know you're all out there seeking to do the same thing for the same reasons. We really need your support, and we feel blessed to be able to contribute support to you and your quest, so that this can be done safely, so that your true will can be discovered and you can cause change to occur in conformity with will. That's really the objective here. That's why we're taking psychedelics. That's why we're meditating. And that's why we seek to harmonize all systems, so that, we can move very rapidly to a state of higher consciousness, a place of homeostasis, a place of peace, a place of wisdom, so that, we can guide ourselves and guide others, so that the present calamitous course of the human race can be diverted into something hopefully a little bit more fruitful and more sustainable. So thanks for watching.